What's up guys, welcome to another range day. Today we're going to be shooting my very first 2011 from Atlas Gunworks, the brand new EOS. Guys, if you enjoy the content that I'm making, then please make sure to like and subscribe and leave me a message down in the comments section. I hate asking, but it really does help with the algorithm a lot, so I'd really appreciate it. And if you ring the bell icon, you should get notifications when new videos are released as well. Additionally, if you want to get more Chester's Hobbies content, you can follow me on Instagram where you can see what I'm working on and get previews of upcoming videos. And I'm also pretty active on Reddit if you'd like to follow along with the conversations there. Alright, well that's enough of that, so let's get back to the gun of the day, my brand new Atlas EOS. So this is a really exciting one for me, guys. Now I love shooting a wide variety of 9mm handguns, but traditionally my favorites have always been CZs and 2011s, or technically double stack 1911s, which I'm going to be referring to as 2011s for the remainder of the video here, just to keep things simple. Now, as much as I love 2011s, up until this point, my experience from an ownership standpoint has only been with a couple of STIs, a couple Staccatos, and a Springfield Prodigy. Since 2019, I have never been able to find another gun that felt and shot better than my STI DVC-P, which has a built-in compensator, ultra-smooth action, and a phenomenal trigger. There really aren't a lot of shops that carry more expensive 2011s in my area, and I know that the law of diminishing returns applies to a lot of things in firearms, but especially to 2011s. So I really wasn't seeking out anything beyond what I had already determined was the pinnacle of handguns in my eyes. Then recently, I had an opportunity to handle and shoot a ported Fowler Vanta 9, and I was actually completely blown away by just how smooth and buttery the gun both handled and shot. So that experience essentially proved to me that things actually could potentially get better than my DVC-P, and subsequently sent me spiraling down the rabbit hole researching high-end 2011 options. After a ton of research, I decided that instead of taking incremental steps up the ladder, I wanted to go straight to what many consider to be the top of the mountain, aside from fully custom guns with super long lead times of course, which ultimately led me to Atlas Gunworks. Now Atlas has been making top tier handmade 2011s for a little over 8 years now, with a wide variety of models and technologies available. They're primarily known for their spectacular fit and finish, incredible triggers, and their expertly tuned performance. Now there are several challenges when jumping into the Atlas pond. Aside from the most obvious challenge for most people, including myself, which is of course the exceptionally high price, the next biggest challenges are choosing from their wide variety of intriguing models, and then at least for me, committing to the purchase without having the chance to get my hands on it first, since there really aren't many actively stocking Atlas dealers near me. Now while they do have a ton of interesting models and I'd actually be excited to try any of them, they actually released 2 brand new models for 2024 that are ported straight from the factory. The full-size Apollo and the compact EOS. Now since I've been focusing so much on ported barrels this year, these seem like the most obvious choices for me. But the only problem is, which one should I get? The Apollo looks like one of the flattest, softest, and fastest shooting 9mm guns that I've ever seen, and the EOS looks like an incredible compact commander-sized option that would go very well with my ported Shadow 2 compact. Not an easy choice. So, as many folks online would say as a joke, I actually decided to go with both. So I sold some guns, guitars, and organs that I wasn't using and placed my orders. Which actually brings up another major challenge with Atlas guns, the wait time. Atlas's popularity has ballooned so much in the past year that their previously advertised wait time of 3 to 4 months has quickly turned into a 12 to 14 month lead time, which is crazy. It's certainly a great problem for them to have, but for me as a consumer and also a content creator that wants to feature really cool guns on the channel, that is a long time to wait, guys. So I've got to give a huge shout out here to Covert Projects for helping make my Atlas dreams a reality. I cannot recommend them enough, guys. They are fantastic. So I put in my orders for both the Apollo and the EOS, and the EOS showed up first. Now I'm sure you can imagine there was a lot of anticipation leading up to my first moments with this gun. After everything I had heard about not just Atlas guns, but the EOS specifically, my expectations were sky high. And I've got to be honest here, guys. So far, the EOS has actually managed to exceed my expectations. Now, I've only had the chance to put a few mags through it so far, but the shooting experience has been fantastic, and I can't wait to get it out for a full range day. Which is, of course, exactly what we're going to do today. But before we do that, let's run down the features of the EOS real quick, and then we'll hit the range. So for starters, the whole gun and all of the small parts are DLC'd in black, which both looks fantastic and is a wonderful and durable coating for firearms, and exactly what I would expect to see at this price point. Now getting into the details, let's go top down here and start off with one of my absolute favorite features of the EOS, The slide. Guys, even though this is their carry model with a compressed 13-pound recoil spring, I can sincerely say that I have never felt a smoother action in my life. It feels sublime. The slide to frame fit is absolutely impeccable with no movement at all, and I'm a big fan of the wide and deep serrations that come up over the tri-top slide. They are really grippy and make the slide operation super fun and satisfying to work with. And I also personally think they look really good too, which is a nice bonus. Of course, one of the most attractive features of the EOS is actually the barrel and slide ports, which are V-style slits on the left and right side in an almost V-nose configuration set a little further back. And in the few mags that I've put through this gun so far, I would say that they are extremely effective at mitigating muzzle rise and felt recoil, and I can't wait to spend the day with them today. Now, the EOS comes with a nicely machined and pre-installed optic plate straight from the factory. When you place your order, you can select from 8 different plates covering just about any optic you could imagine, but I went with the classic RMR footprint on mine, and I'm currently trying out the new RMR HD with a 3.25 MOA dot. Originally, I had a traditional RMR on there, but I wanted a bigger window to help with shot tracking, and I'd heard a lot of good things about the RMR HD, so I grabbed one, and so far I'm really liking it. Aesthetically, I'll say it does take a little bit of getting used to, but it's growing on me a lot. I also love that it has a top-loading battery and way better buttons than any other Trijicon optic that I've used before. So far so good with the RMR HD, and I'll be excited to see how it does on the range today. Now, we've got a great set of iron sights here, with a really thin and robust serrated black rear sight with a fiber optic front sight. Now, these iron sights gave me a perfect lower 1/3 co-witness with the RMR, but since the RMR HD has a higher deck height, it's more like a lower 1/8 co-witness here. I can barely see the irons in the window, but I can still see them and they are usable. And at the end of the day, I really don't mind because it just gives me a clearer field of view overall. One detail that I really like with this plate and iron setup is that the serrated rear sight is very thin, which means that an SRO or an RMR HD that might normally hang over the breech on other guns is nicely set back and out of the way here. And that's a really nice touch. Now, if you look closely at the barrel hood, you'll notice that there's an engraved Atlas logo along with their trademarked Perfect Zero philosophy to tuning their guns. The goal behind this philosophy is that when you fire the gun and prepare for your next shot, as soon as the recoil process is completed, your sight should be right back on target where your first shot was fired with little to no muzzle movement after returning to that original point of aim. Granted, the skill of the user and the ammo being used will no doubt factor into the final results, but this is something the folks at Atlas really strive for and pay very close attention to when designing and tuning their guns. And personally, I think that's pretty cool. Now, getting into the lower frame here, it's pretty awesome, guys. I was really worried that the carry style commander grip would be too small, but it actually feels fantastic in my hands. The length of the grip itself is great. I have medium to large hands with long fingers, and I can get a nice full purchase on it without any part of my fingers or hands falling off the grip. The width of the grip is also better than I expected it to be, giving me plenty of space for my support hand to grab onto when controlling recoil. The texture is a medium aggressive texture that would carry well but still provides a decent amount of grip under fire. The omission of a grip safety gives the EOS a nice beaver tail that feels similar to something like my Shadow 2 Compact, and the trigger guard has a really nice double undercut to help you get a nice high grip on the pistol. The magazine release is in a perfect place to hit with my thumb without breaking my grip, and it's very smooth and easy to actuate. It's also drilled and tapped in case I ever want to get any sort of extended magazine release button, but so far I'm fine with leaving it how it is. Now, I was a little bit worried about the lack of a mag funnel, which does make sense since this is a gun that's designed to be a super high-end carry gun and not necessarily a range gun, but personally I do tend to like running extended mag wells or mag funnels on the range when I can, and looking at the interior of the grip frame here, there's really not too much beveling and flaring going on, so I am still a little bit concerned about it in terms of how it performs as a range gun when it comes to reloads, but we'll see how it goes today. Now, the safety feels excellent. It's extremely positive with no play at all between safe and fire, and Atlas actually angles their safeties up a little bit higher than other companies making 2011s as well, which gives you a little bit more room for your support hand to get nice and high on the grip. The slide lock and release lever is slightly extended but nicely blended between the grip and the frame. Usually with 2011s, I'll have to drop the slide using the lever with my support hand, but this one is right on the edge of me being able to reach it with my primary hand thumb. I do have to break my grip a little bit to do so though, which isn't really ideal, so I think I'm going to try both methods on the range today and see which one works better for me. And then we get into the trigger, and man guys, let's just start off by saying this is hands down the best handgun trigger that I've ever felt. It's a short, flat-faced aluminum trigger shoe with the tiniest amount of take-up, and then a nice firm wall with zero play, grit, or creep, and then an incredibly crisp and clean break, followed by an extremely short, positive, and tactile reset that puts you right back on the wall and ready for the next shot. This thing is spectacular, guys. Now, I love my STI DVC-P, which does have a slightly lighter trigger than the EOS since that gun is designed more for competition and this one is for carry. But even that trigger has just the tiniest amount of grit to it that is simply non-existent with this one. I am absolutely in love with it. Now, aside from the trigger, the star of the show on the lower is this brand new compact steel frame with a full-length dust cover and light rail. This steel frame adds about 6 ounces of weight over the otherwise very similarly appointed aluminum-framed Atlas Aries, and that reportedly makes this gun a lot more pleasant to shoot. And I've got to say, I believe it, because in the configuration that you see it in here with the Trijicon RMR HD and an empty flush fit magazine, it weighs almost exactly 40 ounces, which for a compact range gun is fantastic. It balances exceptionally well in the hand, and it really doesn't feel like it would be too heavy to carry for me. Now, Atlas themselves have said that they don't believe the extra 6 ounces make a very big difference in the carry feel compared to the Aries, and that the benefits to the recoil impulse were worth the extra weight. But for me personally, I'm really not planning on carrying this gun. I'm just really psyched to run it on the range. So that just about covers it here, guys. I've been dry firing this gun like crazy since I got it, but I haven't had a chance to run it for a full range day yet. So we're going to change that right now. Let's hit the range and see how the Atlas EOS performs. All right, guys, first shots of the day with the brand new Atlas EOS. Let's see how this thing feels. Holy crap. That is extremely soft shooting, very fast back on target, phenomenal trigger. That first double tap really caught me off guard. That might be one of the fastest I've ever done. So yeah, I mean, this thing feels fantastic. This is going to be a lot of fun, guys. So guys, to give you an idea of what Atlas means when they talk about perfect zero, that first double tap was very, very fast for me. And these are where the 2 shots went. So, I mean, that's maybe 2 inches or so at 10 yards. Very, very fast for me. So that's what they're talking about with perfect zero, is that the dot comes right back to where you fired your first shot and sets you up for the follow-up shot. So really, really cool. Let's keep running it. Oh, that's interesting. That's the first one I got so far. That's a failure to eject. Interesting. So guys, a lot of people have been asking me about these new Infinity targets that I've been using. These are self-healing, weatherproof targets made from recycled rubber by Infinite Defense, and they're estimated to last for about 7,000 rounds, which is pretty impressive. I love that I can safely shoot them at any range that I want, even point blank, and all I have to do to reset them is hit them with a little spray paint. I would definitely recommend them as convenient, portable targets for up-close training and fun on the range. If you want to try some out for yourself, you can use the code Chester10 to save a little bit on some great targets. Alright, now back to the video. Alright guys, I've got to be honest here, I was actually feeling a bit under the weather on the range today, which I do unfortunately think affected my performance a bit, but I still had an awesome time shooting the Atlas EOS. I put 350 rounds through the gun today and had one single failure to eject early on in the session. Now I hadn't added any oil in a week and I had shot it a few times since then, so I'll take the blame on that one, because once I added a little bit of oil on the range, it ran 100% perfectly for the rest of the session. 2011s do tend to like to run wet, so that was really my bad for forgetting to lube it before heading out to the range. The only other issue that I had is that the optic plate got a little loose by the end of the session, which did affect accuracy a bit towards the end. Fortunately, this is an easy fix, but I will say that I assumed that since Atlas had shipped the EOS with the plate installed that it most likely had red Loctite on it, so I was a little bit surprised to see it loosening on me after just a few hundred rounds. But again, very easy fix, so I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. So all things considered, I would say that the reliability was very good, but let's talk about the performance and the experience of running the EOS for a day on the range. So jumping right in, let's start with my favorite feature, the trigger. Now this is my first experience with an Atlas trigger, and it's simply fantastic. The break is light and ultra crisp without being too sensitive, and the reset is super short and tactile. I think I probably had some of my fastest splits ever with this trigger today, and it helped make the gun super accurate for me and a ton of fun to run. I actually found the carry grip and grip texture to be really comfortable and effective. The length felt basically perfect, and the texture dug into my hands sufficiently without becoming too uncomfortable. Now reloads were actually quite a bit better than I expected them to be. Although I would still love to have an external magwell option on here, I really only got hung up on the magazine insertion like 2 or 3 times I think, and most of my reloads were actually very smooth. I definitely did find it to be significantly faster to drop the slide with my primary hand thumb as opposed to my support hand thumb, so that's what I ended up doing for the majority of the day, and it worked really well for me. I did have to break my grip a little bit, but with training and repetition, I would say that it's still not ideal, but definitely doable for me and not the end of the world. The slide was extremely smooth and fun to operate with those excellent slide serrations, and the gun ran great both with and without the Surefire X300 weapon light attached. Now the RMR HD worked really well, and I definitely appreciated the larger window over a traditional RMR. I will say that the ports definitely got it pretty filthy to the point of almost being completely blacked out by the end of the session, but with a both eyes open style target focus, it wasn't an issue for me at all under live fire, and I honestly barely even noticed it until I got home. Interestingly though, while the optic did get really filthy, the barrel and slide really didn't get as dirty as I would have expected them to with this porting. So that was actually pretty interesting to see. It was one of the cleaner porting systems I've seen after several hundred rounds. Now it could partially be that it's a nicely DLC'd barrel, and so maybe that extra lubricity helps out a little bit, but either way it was pretty cool. Now as for the two things that really set the EOS apart, let's talk about the steel frame and the V-nose ports. Now as for the steel frame, the EOS definitely feels hefty in the hand, but has a fantastic balance to it, which really helps a lot with the shooting experience. I love shooting heavy guns on the range, so for me, this is a huge bonus. However, I will say that if you're considering carrying something like this over, say, maybe a more traditional Glock 19, while the size isn't all that different, the weight increase is very substantial, and it's definitely going to be noticeable in my opinion, as the EOS is roughly a full pound heavier than a typical Glock 19. Now I can see where Atlas probably feels that the extra weight of the EOS doesn't make a big difference in the carryability over something like the Ares, for example, but I really do think that this is something that each individual is going to have to decide for themselves based on previous experiences and what they're comfortable with. From a pure shooting and range gun perspective though, it is fantastic. That extra weight absorbs so much of the felt recoil and makes it easily the softest shooting compact handgun that I've ever experienced, no question. And then when you add the V-nose porting, you get a gun that is not only very soft shooting, but also extremely fast back on target. Doubles, triples, and rapid fire strings are easy to keep on target with a good red dot. At least for the most part, and this is where I think me not feeling well got a little bit in the way of my experience today. I was kind of struggling a bit on the range today with certain strings of fire where I felt like the gun was moving around on me more than I thought it should have been. When I got home and analyzed the footage, I realized that I was actually overdriving the gun and pushing it down too far under recoil, making for larger groups and a lot more effort than was actually necessary. Modern Warriors actually talked about this in their video review as well, and I can very much see what they were saying now. To prove my theory, I went back out to the range on a completely separate day, took just 5 warm-up shots, and then reshot my 5-shot group at 7 yards while barely warmed up. Now I'll roll the comparison footage in here, but I think what you'll see is that when I used a firm grip but didn't overdrive the gun in the second session, the EOS came back to 0 very nicely for me and gave me a solid rapid fire group that was all in the A zone with better trigger speed as well. But in the original session when I was overdriving the gun, my group was huge in comparison and the splits were slower too. So all of that is ultimately to say that the steel frame and V-nose ports are extremely effective, and if you're primarily used to shooting guns that have more aggressive recoil and muzzle rise and require additional effort from you as the shooter, you might need a little bit of practice with the EOS before it really shines for you. The bottom line here is the combination of the steel frame, the V-nose ports, the trigger, and the ergonomics of the Atlas EOS make this the fastest and softest shooting compact or commander-sized handgun that I've ever shot. Full stop. Now, if you've been watching my channel recently, you might wonder, how does the Atlas EOS compare to my CZ Shadow 2 compact that was ported by United Firearms, which I had previously stated was my favorite compact handgun that I'd ever shot? Well, I did shoot them side by side on a couple of occasions, and in terms of practical performance differences, they're honestly pretty similar. However, when shot directly side by side, the EOS legitimately made the ported Shadow 2 compact feel snappy in comparison, which was actually a huge surprise for me. So I would absolutely say that the EOS has noticeably less felt recoil than my ported Shadow 2 compact. Otherwise, ergonomically, I do love the palm swell vital grips and think that the Shadow 2 compact melts into my hands a little bit better than the EOS, but the EOS is surprisingly close and still feels amazing to me. But aside from the ergonomics with aftermarket grips, pretty much everything else is a huge win for the EOS over the Shadow 2 compact in my opinion. The fit and finish is second to none, the slide to frame fit and smoothness of the action is exceptional, the optic mounting system, co-witness sights, and stock grip texture are all far superior, the trigger is fantastic, and the safety lever on the EOS puts the Shadow 2 compact safety to shame. Now, to be fair, the EOS also costs about 3 times as much as the CZ Shadow 2 compact with aftermarket parts and custom porting from United Firearms. So the big question that's definitely worth asking here is it really worth it? And that's really going to be up to every individual to decide for themselves. I would never recommend going into debt for what is ultimately a luxury item. But if you do have the money and you want the refined experience and unmatched fit and finish of an Atlas handgun, and you want what could very well be the finest shooting compact carry style handgun ever made, I think that the Atlas EOS is very much worth considering. So that's going to be all for today, guys. I've got a ton of handgun reviews on the way, as well as more ARs, AKs, PCCs, and shotguns. So remember to like and subscribe, ring the bell, stay tuned, and thanks for stopping by.